Okay. Well, Santiago, thanks for the invitation, and I'm happy to share some of my experience with opening up culture data in the Netherlands, which I think fits very nicely into your program about smart city approaches. And basically, my story will be about how the cultural sector and public institutions in that field can also become part of a smart city infrastructure. So what is Open Culture Data? Because this is the initiative, the project that I'm going to talk about. This is a network initiative which includes not only people from cultural institutions, but also developers, designers, specialists in the field who actually are interested in working with cultural materials. And we started this initiative as an ad hoc initiative in our free time in September 2011. And my talk will be a little bit about how we scaled this initiative up into something which is quite successful in the Netherlands. In general, the aim of this initiative is to make sure that the cultural sector becomes part of the broader open data movement that is happening in all the other fields that you've probably also heard about already as part of this program. Why do we think this is relevant? Over the last decade, GLAMs, so cultural institutions, galleries, libraries, archives, museums, have been very busy with digitizing their collections and also partly making them accessible online, which creates all new kinds of nice opportunities for people to use this information, to consume this information. However, currently a lot of this information is still only partly accessible, and there are often limitations for people to actually reuse that material in a technological way or in a legal sense. And we think this can be improved, and this is what we're propagating with Open Culture Data. It's also something that's on the digital agenda. Commissioner Nelly Kroes has been quite vocal about the open data movement also applying to cultural institutions. So it's also a political movement. It's also part of the politics of the European Commission. And we also think that there are a few benefits for cultural institutions themselves to make use of the open data principles. It aligns with their public mission to make material available to the broad public. It offers opportunities for them to actually improve their data by connecting it to other data sets, by receiving feedback and improvements from third parties. And on a more general sense, it increases their relevance, but also it increases the traffic that they receive from end users. I think those are the most important benefits. There was a very nice paper written about this if you want to learn more, which is called The Problem of the Yellow Milkmaid, which really delves into what the benefits and the challenges and downsides of open data in the cultural field are. And how do we do this with this initiative? Well, we try to support the cultural heritage sector with a few things. We encourage, so this is mostly about propagating the message of what open culture can do in the cultural field. So we encourage institutions to start opening up at least parts of their collection. We bring all that material together in one overview on our website where people can see what is currently openly available in the cultural field in the Netherlands. we share knowledge and experiences, best practices from institutions who have opened up their material so that other institutions can learn from their experiences. And very importantly, we also try to connect the cultural data with the actual reusing parties, so developers, designers, who actually create new things with these open data sets. Yeah, no worries. And the way we achieve this is by organizing activities like workshops, but also giving presentations on relevant conferences, actually supporting cultural institutions in the process, the steps they need to go through before they can open a data set, mainly by organizing a masterclass program, which constitutes of 5 days following a course for cultural professionals in which they learn to open up data sets. And we organize a competition for developers to promote the use of cultural data for new applications. When we started the initiative, we defined what open culture data means to us. And this is basically a translation of more general open data principles to the cultural field. So firstly, and by doing that, we established 5 principles of what open culture data means to us, just to be able to communicate this to the community that follows the initiative. Firstly, we said that data in the cultural field is not only the descriptive data about the collections, but it can also be the actual digitized objects that are in a collection of a cultural institution. Both are very valuable and have a benefit to be opened to for reuse. The second principle is that when we say open in this context, it means that everyone is able to make use of this data. So it's not excluding any parties. It's not specifically for one target group. No, it means that it's made available in such a way that everyone is able to reuse this material. It has to be, of course, available in a digital format that allows for this reuse. It has to be technically open also. And it has to be documented so that people who first encounter a data set know what they can expect within this data set and know how they can technically make use of that. And the way that we accommodate for this is that we encourage institutions to write what we call a data blog, which is a very understandable, easy to read one-pager that describes what a data set looks like and how this technically can be accessed. The last thing that we always stress, the last principle, is that when an institution makes a data set available, it's not only publishing it somewhere and then you're done. No, this opens up a conversation with the reusers. And often these people also ask questions, provide feedback. And we always emphasize to the institutions that they have to take that into account, so that it's possible that they'll have to spend time in answering questions, communicating with reusers, and that this is actually part of the process of opening up. This is just a visualization of what the principles, when you translate them to copyright, mean in terms of what restrictions you can and cannot apply to an open data set. But I will not go too deep into that. Okay, so when we established these principles and when we started in 2011, it was just a very ad hoc initiative, which basically meant that we had a few cultural professionals that were interested in releasing a data set, but they were from actually quite big institutions. So for instance, at that point already the Rijksmuseum from Amsterdam was part of it. The National Archives from the Netherlands were interested. And what we did is we just went to a hackathon that was organized by the Dutch government, which was a hackathon for actually working with open government data. But we went there to promote the cultural data sets. Yeah, thank you, Santiago. And this is what it looks like, the hackathon that we promoted the cultural data sets at. So it's basically a lot of people that can write code who come together one day to work on applications. And the very interesting thing for us when we did this was that there was already a lot of interest in the culture data from the developers. These developers were actually expecting to work with government data, but when they learned that there was also culture data to work with, they got really interested. So from the total of almost 50 apps that were submitted to this contest during this hackathon, 8 of the apps were actually part of, or were actually using culture data instead of government data. And the winner of this competition was actually an application that uses culture data instead of government data. So we sort of stepped in there and took over from the data from government. And this is the application that won. It's called History. And it's an application that uses historical video footage in a mobile application, and you can freeze this footage when you recognize, for instance, a building, like in this picture, the Rijksmuseum. And then the challenge of this app is to overlay the historical footage with a photograph that you take with your smartphone from the current situation. So it creates a sort of overview from what something looked like in the past and what it currently looks like. So it's a very nice way of enriching historical footage with current footage through a mobile application. So after 2012, we were able to scale up this initiative with some actual funding so that we could work on this as actual work. Because we gained support from Images for the Future, which was a large mass digitization effort in the Netherlands, and the Creative Commons Netherlands chapter. And that allowed us to organize the master classes that I've spoken about before, to actually educate the sector about open data. And it also allowed us to organize our own hackathons and competitions instead of being part of other hackathons. So we organized the masterclass around 5 topics, which were copyright, technology, possible reuse scenarios, a question about the policy, so the benefits and the risks. And finally, the last lesson was held after a hackathon to evaluate what actually was done with the data sets together with the institutions. And this was a masterclass that was attended by 17 candidates. Thank you. And as I said, next to the masterclass, we also organized a competition where we challenged developers to create applications that would expand the audiences for the institutions, so that allow the institutions to reach a larger audience through new innovative ways of presenting the cultural data sets. And we were also very interested in applications that would not revolve around one data set, but that would combine collections from different institutions. And we ran this competition. When we ran this, we got almost 30 apps submitted for this competition. And I'm just going to tell you a little bit about the winner, which was called Muse app. This is a very nice tablet application that allows you to create your own artwork based on cutouts from existing artworks from, for instance, the Rijksmuseum collection, the Amsterdam Museum collection. So it takes cutouts from existing works that are openly available, and then you can drag within the tablet application them into a new order, basically. And you can create your own background and then create your own new artwork based on existing art. And finally, I think it's also good to tell you a little bit about what we're currently doing with the initiative. Because in 2014, we actually got funding from the Ministry of Culture. Which we were very proud of, because it's also a sort of acknowledgement for us that our initiative is something that the ministry also deems as an important development within the sector. And this funding allows us to do this year another round of masterclasses. And we have another 15 participants that we're currently educating on how to open up data sets in the cultural field. And we have another competition, which is, we call this an app challenge, because we're now not asking developers to submit applications and give prizes based on that, but we're asking them to give us a plan on an application that they want to develop. And we're gonna select the best 3 plans and actually fund the development of the things that they are proposing to develop for us. And we're working on some technical infrastructure, which we call the Open Culture Data API, which allows developers to use all of the data sets that are open in the Dutch heritage field from one central point of entry. So we really want to lower the technical barriers for developers in the Netherlands that want to use culture data. And just to give you an idea of what we've accomplished in the Netherlands so far is that there are over 40 data sets from more than 25 cultural institutions in the Netherlands currently available. And they are all on our website in our overview. There's also a bit more than 40 applications that we know of and that we have documented on our website that use the cultural data that is open in the Netherlands. If we finish the activities this year, we've educated more than 30 professionals in the field on how to deal with open data in the cultural sector. And one very nice thing is that there are sister initiatives of opencultuurdata.nl in Belgium and in Finland already. So it's something that's also starting to grow in other countries. And that was my short presentation about open cultural data. And I hope this was interesting for you when you're thinking about smart cities. I've included a few links where you can learn a bit more about the various things I've talked about. And also feel free to contact me through the details that are on this slide. And if there are questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you very much, Martin.